It's unbelievable.
Right. It's the heart that's passing over right now. So hopefully it'll.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be, my gosh, over and done with.
Like a radar. Is that what you ran into?
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. For the board members and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Doesn't sound like your own.
Trustee Bowen,
Present.
trustee Brewer,
Present.
trustee Cascarella,
Present.
trustee Mohica, treasurer Fedewa.
Here.
Clerk Clark is present, supervisor Fletcher.
Here.
You have the quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion to excuse trustee Mohica would be in order. Brenda?
So moved.
Is there
Support.
There is support. All those in favor of excusing trustee Mohica, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have the agenda before us. Any additions or deletions? If not, a motion to approve would be in order.
Oh.
Been moved by Beth and supported by Andrea that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public comment. Now is our time for public comment from the audience. So if you're here this evening to speak to the board, this is your opportunity. We ask that when you come to speak, you just step up to the podium here to state your name and address for the record and let us know about the issue that you're here to speak about. So we'll open the floor now and people can come on up.
Might have turned up, that rain's kind of, I think some of them said they can't hear you. Can you turn the volume up or not? Lyle Leatherbury, 533 Theo. Can everybody hear?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I don't-
I'm sure most of these people are here to talk about the drainage issues. And I just want to get my licks in first before, because we do have drainage issues. And I've read too many things from about, it's not your responsibility. You guys are stewards for us. You need, if there needs to be new drains put in, put it out there, and we'll pass, we'll pay our taxes. We always do, obviously. And that just needs something to be done. But I'm here about the traffic situation. I don't know how to put it, but it's out of control. Saginaw Street between 6 and 9 PM is nothing but an Indianapolis 500. Cut exhaust, motorcycles way too loud. And on Michigan Avenue, since I was here 3 weeks or a month ago, 3 times on Michigan Avenue, I've been passed. I was doing 35, 40 miles an hour when the school wasn't in session, and people use that center turn lane to pass me. Now, I don't know what control you have over the Eaton County, other than you pay their fee to provide us police service. That something needs to be done. Too many people are getting hurt, killed on Saginaw Street. And if you got to hang on just going through there by Walmart, that is crazy. Everybody is speeding. You need to tell our police force to slow these people down before something really bad happens. But yeah, like I said, you guys are our stewards. You need to make something happen with this drainage issue. I hope every one of them really gets your gets the point across to you guys. This is crazy. If I'd spent $umpteen,000 and had air systems come and do, I got 3 sub pumps in my house, 3. And they barely kept up. I didn't have any water issues whatsoever, but everybody all around me did. And by the grace of God, I didn't get water damage, but a lot of these people did. Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience like to speak this evening?
Good evening. My name is Barb Shipman. I reside, my husband and I are at 2508 Park Street in our township or Lansing address 48917. I'm a member of the Delta Township Senior Council. I would like to share an announcement of an upcoming program that the Delta Township Senior Council members, in partnership with the 39ers, have prepared for Tuesday, September 21st, 2 o'clock in this room on the second floor of the administration building. Now, while the program is live and will be presented in this room, anyone can attend in person or virtually. To attend virtually, you would register with Nicole Combs. She's the secretary of the 39ers and senior programs at ncombsdeltami.gov. Once again, that's ncombsdeltami, all run together.gov, or you could call 517-484-5600. We've prepared a program we're calling Discovering Delta, and we are really excited to have 6 speakers who represent either a township department or an organization. Each speaker will explain their respective department or what their respective department or organization brings to our community. Our program lineup includes Marcus Kirkpatrick. Everyone knows that he's the Director of Parks, Recreation and Cemeteries. Colin Mays, who is the new Director of Economic Development. Nicole Combs, once again, she's the Secretary of 39ers and Senior Programs. Ellen McKenzie, she's Director of the Delta Waverly Community Choir. Jane Thomas will present. She's the President of our Friends of the Delta Township District Library. And Diane Yeager, who will share information regarding the popularity of pickleball in our township. Those who attend the program in person will be able to submit questions on index cards, while those who attend virtually will be able to submit questions via chat box. Do any board members have any questions? We've been promoting it.
Yeah, well, thank you for your involvement. Is the township advertising this at all on the website, for example?
We have our Facebook page, of course, Delta Township Senior Council Facebook page, but also in the newsletter and in Delta Magazine, I believe it was mentioned as well. So yeah, we're just getting the word out.
Yeah.
And I thank you for my time. Another question.
Just a comment, Barb. I absolutely love the work that you all do and the gatherings you
Thank you.
have. It's great seeing you combined with the 39ers and pulling together for this event. And I just continue it. I enjoy going to your meetings. They have excellent cookies. Usually, if you want to go get some good cookies, they have it in great conversation. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much. Cookies are required.
Others in the audience like to speak this evening. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Sherry Castillo. I am here on behalf of my 86-year-old grandmother. Her name is Nancy Davenport, and she resides at 533 Iris Avenue. I'm here about the drainage issues. I actually grew up in Delta Township, and I want to take you back to 1984. I lived on Theo Avenue, which is just one street away from my grandmother on Iris. We always had flooding in our basement. And the flooding started, water started coming in. We were quickly moving our stuff upstairs. And as I hit the stairs, the entire basement wall caved in. The same exact thing happened to the neighbor right next door. We used to have what's called Lake Iris right in my backyard. Our home, it was a disaster. Insurance didn't cover. The water went all the way up to the ceiling of the basement and soaked through, and the house shifted. We couldn't live there for like 5 months. I'd like to take you to present day. My grandmother, August 12th, was when we had really bad storms. And she has had flooding in her basement like a lot of other people in the Iris Theo area. And she was woke up at 2 a.m. to sewage shooting out of her toilet. It had been shooting out of her toilet. Water and sewage covered the entire main floor of the house. She's 86. She has lived there 67 years. And this has been the worst, that she has had to experience. Insurance does not cover any of this. She cannot live in her home. She uses a walker. She uses a cane. She has been pushed out of her home because of this. We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. And she has submitted the form to the township to file a claim. We have not heard back about that yet, but it doesn't look too promising. And these people need support. They need support of Delta Township, Eaton County Drain Commission, whatever it may be, but you're talking about people that are getting pushed out of their homes. She's 86. She needs help. And I'm here on her behalf because she's not doing very well. And I think the stress and her having to be at the house a lot and do things has just caught up with her. And she's just not feeling well enough, to come here. So I'm here on her behalf. I really would like this looked into. And these residents need support. This has been going on for decades. Absolute craziness with all of this flooding in Delta Township. And something needs to be done. So I'm asking you to please look into this. Please look at the status of her form that was submitted. And help in any way that you possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will discuss this after we've had everybody in the audience have a chance to speak. We'll discuss this issue as a board. So anybody else this evening would like to come up and speak?
Hi, my name is Michelle Pellicos. I live at 420 White Pine Boulevard, and I'm here with a couple of my neighbors. We experienced the flooding of August 12th also. And I've owned this property myself for about 8 years, and it's the third time that it's flooded. We recently, upon investigation with a committee of our neighborhood, have learned when the plat was laid out for the neighborhood, that there was supposed to be some type of drainage connection to Canal Road here, which for some reason didn't occur when they were building. Excuse me. And that appears to be what the problem is. When we get one of these big storms, the water all backs up and my house is the lowest spot in that particular section. But any other time that we do get heavy rainfall, most of us experience standing water in our backyard for a day or so. So that's something that we would like to have addressed and find out what we can do with the township and the county to improve the drain.
Anybody else this evening like to come up?
My name is Kathleen Henderson. My mother's 90. She's experiencing the flooding. She gets the water in the backyard and in the basement. We're all here for the same reason. We got water issues. I think the bottom line is what can you do for us, or what are you gonna do? I feel it's the township's responsibility to handle this situation for us. And I think we're all here to find out what you're gonna do about it. It's getting old. Cleaning up. And the money we spent, have people come in, make sure everything's working right. There's no problem with the stuff. It's the drainage. So, thank you.
Others in the audience, if you'd like to speak. Is that it? Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion then. And yes, the drainage issues over in that part of the township has been an ongoing issue that we have known of over the course of the years and have from time to time have brought in the drain commissioner who have sat down with folks, residents, and discussed the various options that were available. And I know at the time, a lot of folks didn't really like what the available solutions were. So that's one of the reasons why we're still here today. So Brian, did Ernie want to talk a little bit about some of that?
Yeah, we can, whatever the board would like. Rick can discuss what happens with the water surcharging, and Ernie can give a little background on the Biggs and Branks inter-county drain. Just so the board knows, the last time we did have a public meeting, April 18th of 2016 in the Iris neighborhood for neighbors, and had that was led by the township. We had the drain commissioner there to discuss some of the potential options there. As you all know, this is a decades old issue that is a very, unfortunately, a very expensive issue to fix, and really needs to be kind of a resident led. It'll take a drainage petition. We do not have control over some of the drains in there, which Rick can talk about, either orphan drains, which are private drains, or drains that nobody's accounted for, inter-county drains or county drains that are in those areas are not under our authority. But over the years, we have led some efforts of trying to provide education or help try to analyze some potential solutions. But
yeah, absolutely. Before you jump and start, I just want to reiterate, it isn't a case where the township has ignored these issues. We have definitely been engaged in working with the Drain Commission over the years. And as Brian said, there were one of the last times there was one of these, big rain events that caused a lot of flooding, facilitating meetings with the residents. And it really, we don't want to force a solution on anybody, and that's why it always was wanted to be driven by the residents who are living there, who will be ultimately paying for any improvements to the drain. So, but definitely, if the residents are ready to make those changes, I think that we can certainly facilitate meetings once again with the drain commissioner to make that whole process start and begin. But go ahead.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher and board members. I'll just briefly talk about the sanitary and storm systems. There are let me start with, there's the sanitary storm sewers. They go from your home directly to the wastewater treatment plant. They're carrying your domestic waste from your toilet, showers, dishwashers, showers, into the treatment plant for treatment. Then there are what are called storm sewers, and they carry surface water or storm water directly to a water body. And there are combined sewers. They haven't built combined sewers since the 70s, the late 60s and 70s. And that's where everything funneled into one pipe and went to a treatment plant and then overflowed into the river. They haven't built those in the 70s. In Michigan in the 90s, they kind of forced a lot of separation of that. But Delta Township does not have combined sewers. We do have sanitary sewers and storm sewers. And there's no real direct connection between the two. However, as one system starts to fail or gets overwhelmed, it does indirectly affect the other. So as your storm sewers become overwhelmed, and you start having flooding, it is going to impact our sanitary sewer. It's either through surface flooding. Our system is right next to the stormwater system. If it can't go down one pipe, it'll go down to the other pipe. It's going to go to the least resistance. Water is like electricity. It's going to flow somewhere if it's allowed, it has a path. So surface flooding will affect our system. Now, we do have measures in place to help prevent or slow that. They're called rain catchers. So we put a molded plastic piece in our system to help restrict or slow that flow of surface water into our system. But sump pumps and footing drains, roof drains will impact our system if they're connected. And as the storm over the decades, this has been going on for a long time. If the storm sewer doesn't work efficiently or adequately, homeowners will take their stormwater, their sump pump to this. It's not working to the storm sewer, they hook it to our system. And the more and more people do that and put roof drains and sump pumps and footing tiles into our system, then we start getting impacted. If the stormwater can't take it away, it will impact us through that indirectly. If residents would like to know if their sump pumps or roof drains are connected to the sanitary sewer, you can call our main line and we can send someone out to help you locate that. We can do dye testing, whatnot, inspect your home to let you know if it is hooked in. If it is, it really should be switched over to the storm sewer. And that will also help flooding in your house on the sanitary side. We can also show you what you may put in your service main line for like a check valve or an isolation valve during some storms if you experience sanitary home flooding. So we will do that free of charge, go out to your home and show you what's available. Give a quick look at your home and see if you are connected.
Are you saying you can plumb your sub pump into the sewer system?
No.
No, you're not supposed to.
Exactly right.
But there are a lot of homes that have because the storm sewer is inadequate. So they switch it to the sanitary because it does work 99% of the time. So.
Is it a violation when you do it?
Yes.
You ever check on that?
Normally we don't because I can't tell you exactly where, I have no solution for you to say where you need to hook it into. So bottom line is this meeting is really about the storm system and fixing that solution first. Pardon me? To have your home checked for, you would call the utility department main line. It's 517-323-8570. It's also on the website. 8570, yep. And again, we cannot do any of the work for you. We can just help determine if you have a illicit connection.
Okay, do you have a question for the runner first?
Well, I have a question. Well, I do have a question. I have lots of questions. But in a home inspection, would that be something that would surface in a home inspection that it was improperly connected?
I am not familiar
No?
with the
Okay.
regulations are,
I'm
so I
just
cannot
curious.
tell you.
Thank you.
So, yeah. But basically, that's what the connection between the sanitary and the storm is. One gets overwhelmed, it will affect and overwhelm us.
I don't exactly understand really like what, I don't really understand exactly what you're saying, but I know in other areas, this is probably like happening, that their sub pump is hooked up that way and it's overwhelmed and stuff like that, but why is it that all these other drains and all these other townships can keep up? But over here, it's a lake and I just don't quite understand what you're getting at, I guess.
Yeah, we're not, let's have our engineer talk about the broader problem. There's a couple of different pieces of it. And the broader problem is, the drain just doesn't have the capacity and it basically needs a lot of improvements to the drain in that area. And that has become the issue in the past. The drain commissioner has met with residents, presented what the options are. And when the price tag becomes seen, people will have a lot of concerns about that. So, but with that, let's have Ernie talk a little bit about the history of that drain itself.
Sure, Supervisor Fletcher, board members. Certainly, as has been implied, this problem goes way back. As early as 1977, this was last studied, and really identified that the stormwater drains that run all the way to the river and discharge near Waverly Road have about 20% of the capacity that they really need, given how much runoff is generated with all the roofs and sidewalks and driveways and roadways. In '86, they kind of they brushed off the study and took a really hard look on what probably needs to get built realistically. And that's replacing that line from Saginaw all the way to the river. Right now, it's a 30 and a 48. They were talking about a 90-inch diameter pipe. So almost 8-foot diameter pipe, as well as 3 pretty significant detention areas. One over on the Waverly Golf Course property, one near Colt Meadows, Colt School, and then in the Iris area. So back in 1987, that price tag was $9.5 million, which inflated today's dollars would be about 26 million. There was a kind of a separation of those costs between the benefiting public corporations, so Delta, Lansing Township, MDOT, Ingham County, Eaton County. And so depending on how much land area you had in there and how much benefit you received, they kind of split it up on a percentage. And Delta's apportionment would have been about 64%. So in today's dollars, we're talking about a $16 million problem for Delta and Delta's residents. So just to give you some sense of the scope, it's a big problem, obviously, but it's not an easy fix. And that's why you haven't seen the fix implemented, I believe.
So
I
Ernie,
hope
which
that-
drain is it?
So there's 2 drains, that the bank drain and the Briggs drain. Those are both inter-county drains that service more than just our county or our township. They come together at Saginaw near Thomas L. And then they actually become the bank Briggs drain, inter-county drain. So from Saginaw to the river, it's a combined drain. At Saginaw, they split. The bank drain handles the area over by Waverly, and the Briggs drain handles the area over towards Iris and Theo area.
That big project that's going on the corner of Waverly and Saginaw. Now, is that that's gonna have an impact on our water situations, drainage? I mean, that's a big thing going on. We got problems now. Something's gonna be built. I'm just wondering how we're gonna address this.
Yeah, so depending on where you're at on that site, I'm sure that some of it would drain into that area. And so any development plan that would be approved by Lansing Township would have to include reviewing that with the inter-county drainage board to make sure they had enough storage on site to not impact the runoff rate from that site.
So the bottom line is, we have certainly been willing and to facilitate meetings with the Eaton County Drain Commission office to pull the residents together to discuss solutions. And it sounds like residents may be ready to possibly move forward on some potential solutions and pursuing that process. So there definitely is a process that can be done. There's a formal process where the people who live within a drain district can petition the drain commissioner, and once enough people have petitioned that starts the process, and they determine the necessity of the project and then determine the scope of the project and the assessments that will go along with that. So we can certainly once again facilitate meetings with the drain commissioner to start having some serious conversations again, if that's what the residents would like to see, and we can move this forward. So I know that's something that Ernie, I'm sure, would be glad to be involved with in terms of reaching out to the drain office and helping get that set up for folks.
So if I may, so Ernie, it would really require the Eaton County Drain Commissioner and the Ingham County Drain Commissioner, correct, in the solution?
Well, because it's an established inter-county drain, there's actually a board, inter-county drainage board that would be involved. They're the ones that there's representatives from both counties, and they would work together to help implement any improvement plan.
Okay.
Just kind of a question. Ernie, this sounds like a pretty large drainage area, and a number of people have an attributable asset benefit from that drain even though they may not be experiencing the problems that our residents are. But that's because the capacity is what you're telling us is only about what, 20% is what you said of what is needed. So when they do this board of review, the drain commissioner engages in to determine if there's a problem, and it should the drain commissioner then go through engineering to propose a solution, which has been done in the past. It would probably have to be updated. But we're talking a pretty big drainage area with a lot of property owners.
Yeah, almost, when I looked, it was almost 1,000 acres, about 970 acres.
Right, right. So there's a number of people, and just remind me, because I forgot, if there's the citizen initiated petition to the drain office, is this a certain amount of signatures that are required, or is it a certain percentage? I just don't recall.
Yeah, you have to forgive me, I'm not an expert on that. It's a number, I believe. 50 is what I'm thinking, but I could be wrong. And it depends, again, on the size of the district. You're right, this is such a big district.
Right.
I'd really have to get back to you on that to be sure.
But
It's not like it's not like some of our special assessments where you need, 50 plus one
right
of the whole area. It's not that much to get it started.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you the number off the top of my head.
All right. Well, I can get that answer offline. Thanks.
Yep.
Andrea?
Thank you. My questions were along the lines of Treasurer Fedewa's. So there are, when you talk about the solution, and I guess the area, there's a footprint that is part of the drain that needs to be, improved. And I think this is what I heard you said. I just want to be clear. So there are many people that may not be negatively affected that are in that footprint, but are contributing to that problem. And so the solution would be the responsibility of all those parties in that footprint. Do we have any sense of what that quantity is? I know you said the kind of square feet, but that's a little hard for me to kind of grasp what that is. But do we have a sense of, or even like a quarter of the township? I don't know if you can put that in context.
Yeah, I don't have a sense of like parcel numbers or something. I mean, 970 acres. I mean, certainly there's a lot of parcels that are a fractional of an acre in these older subdivisions. So, I mean, I would think it's, a few thousand parcels. It's an area that's roughly 1 mile wide by 2 miles deep. I mean, from Elmwood to Waverly and St. Joe up to the river. It's kind of what we're talking about. Plus it extends somewhat into Lansing Township, mostly the golf course area, I believe.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Ernie and Rick. Question, I think there was mention that MDOT would be a part of this as well. Can you share with me how, in what way is MDOT, would they be a part of it?
So the public agencies, Eaton County Road Commission or the road and the road network. So those capture runoff also, from the street. And so this drain serves the roadways as well as private properties. So with M43 being a state route, MDOT would have the portion that within the footprint of Saginaw that is collected, that would be their responsibility.
And because it's Saginaw, there are businesses and residential areas. And would the township, I'm trying to think about the cost. You went over the surveys and the cost way back when. Would there be some responsibility of the township if this is done? Would there be some financial responsibility of the township as well to participate in this project? Or is it all assessments to those within that, the 974 acres?
So normally, again, I'm not an expert on this, but normally there is what they call an at-large assessment to the township for drainage district assessment. I don't know what the percentage but it tends to try to incorporate public rights of way and the public benefit to the township that they receive from that. So yeah, we pay normally a percentage of all the assessments on an at-large basis.
Okay. And would it be necessary or helpful? You had talked about the illicit sump pump connections. Would that be a first step to address that? Or what would happen if this did get approved and the residents are willing to do it or whatever? Do you have to address those illicit sump pumps, or will those just be cut off when new piping is put in?
So there was an effort back in the late 80s and early 90s to undertake some of that. The problem becomes when you have lacking storm sewer facilities, and not every house has easy access to a stormwater pipe. When you try to make them disconnect from where they're connected to now, which is in many cases a sanitary system, then it ends up going on the ground, flooding backyards. You get neighbors complaining against neighbors, they're draining on me. So it tends to create a lot of issues. And so what seems like it would be a very good thing for our sanitary system, no doubt about it. But if, until they're provided with an alternate way to get rid of that water, you start to have unintended consequences of forcing that issue. So that's a tough spot to, it's a good idea, but it comes with practical issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. And your office, Ernie, is Supervisor Fletcher could take the lead on starting a conversation or a discussion on looking at what options, because it's a new day. So there may be some newer options that are, it's costly, but maybe less costly, or some first steps versus, options of various options that they can look at, because this is obviously a problem. And with the environment, I don't know that it's going to get any better with the environment as it is, and these changes and these hurricanes that are horrible, and all of the environmental changes. So this is probably a good time to look into that. I hate to see and hear that residents are dealing with this, and it's an old issue, but it's not one that's going to go away. It'll probably get worse than get better if not addressed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, I can just in response to that say we've already have a internal working group meeting planned. I believe it's later this week. Certainly that August 12th rain event was a very significant event. Our snow road water, our rain gauge recorded 5 inches in a little less than 5 hours.
Wow.
Which is much more significant than a lot of even the events that you read about in the reports from the 70s that drove that study. So, so there was a lot of calls, not just from people that had flooding in their basements, but streets and everything else. So we worked closely with the drain office and the road commission to try to make sure we could at least take people's calls and give them at least the best information that we could in terms of, who to contact if it's this situation or another. But we're going to try to get together with those agencies and try to streamline that and make sure we're giving good information, perhaps provide some training to our staff. But we've also had some initial discussions and contact with the drain office in terms of maintenance and other items that they want to look at. And so I would expect in a coming meeting that the drain office will probably be here, to give you some more, detailed information about this area in particular.
And Fonda really did hit on a really key issue that is driving a lot of this. On the days that those rains happened, that folks here had flooding in your neighborhood, it wasn't just your particular drain. There was flooding all over. Brian lives in East Lansing, and half of East Lansing ended up having flooding. We saw the stories about all the Metro Detroit and all the homes that got flooded down there. So we used to have these massive rain events that they would say would be 50-year rains or 100-year rains that happen all the time now. It definitely is an issue that's going on. Climate change is impacting all of us very dramatically with some very big cost attached. And it's something that I think all units of government and all of society, we need to figure out, how are we gonna deal with now systems that were designed to handle, these types of events happening every 50 years or whatever, happening on a regular basis now. And it's certainly gonna be a very costly problem to deal with in the years ahead. Look at the Metro Detroit and how many times they've been flooded in just the past couple of years, where entire cities are being flooded, where practically every home is ending up with their basement full of water. We've all seen the highways all shut down. So it's a big problem all across the state. So it's not, in this case, limited just to this particular drain, but we can obviously start talking about the solutions to this particular drain and help facilitate those meetings with the drain commissioner to begin that dialogue, begin that process, and look at the options that are available and see where people want to go.
Brian had a comment.
Yes.
and I-
If I could, Mr. Supervisor, I just, Ernie did a good job and Rick of that issue. I just want to make sure everybody is clear, though, that the numbers to fix those drains are extrapolated from past studies that are quite a bit old. So those are not necessarily hard numbers, just kind of an estimate. And just to your question, Fonda, the township is currently paying for at-large drain assessments for other drain improvements. So any drain improvement, these are not inter-county drains. So I don't know if there's any different nuances to that, but I would assume we would have an at-large portion to any solution. And many, I think many on the board were here for the Carrier Creek drain assessment, which was an extraordinary assessment on the township, which our annual cost is close to $100,000 a year on that drain. So.
Any more questions for these gentlemen here on the board? Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Just for clarification though, Ernie, you're gonna find out what portion of the population, what the number is that has to request the drain office to act.
Yes, I can do that. Yep.
And then, just so everybody's clear, when the drain office makes the decision to act, they're the only unit of government in the state of Michigan that does not require voter approval. They can assess and they just assess each property owner. Because I'm paying the Carrier Creek one.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you all residents for coming and bringing this issue forward once again. And I'm sure there'll be notices sent out once a meeting with the drain commissioner has been coordinated and organized for folks to come and attend and meet with them. Moving down our agenda now, we have the consent agenda before us. What's the pleasure of the board, Dennis?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is it support? Support by Fonda. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on approving the consent agenda?
Treasurer Fiedema,
Yes.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Mohica, clerk is yes, supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving down the agenda on the unfinished business, I just want to let folks know that the request for the special land use permit for case number 052107 has been withdrawn, so that is no longer for us. So this will come off our agenda in future meetings. That the request for rezoning or for a special land use permit, I mean, has been withdrawn.
Supervisor Fletcher, I just have a question on that.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that I read the documents correctly, that by removing this or by them withdrawing, they can never bring it back up again? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, we'll have.
Because
the planning
that was a
director.
little alarming to me, that they could never make that request again. I'm sorry, that's why I said I read through it. I might have missed.
No, that's not the case. They can come back at any time and
Great.
reactivate it.
That's what I wanted to know.
And also it has no effect on the other activities that he has planned for the site, so.
Thank you.
So-
I don't know why I thought I saw that and I wanted to ask about that.
Sure,
but
he can
thank
come
you.
back.
It says that in the memo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought I read it.
It's missing a not. It should say does not relinquish any rights to
Okay,
return.
okay, my mistake then.
Okay.
I apologize for
Thank you
that.
for
So,
clarifying.
Thanks, Gary.
okay, good catch.
Continuing now to items of new business, item number 7, CIA board appointment, and I'm recommending that we appoint Kelvin Jones to the CIA board. Kelvin, I see you're in the audience. Would you like to just come up and say hello to the board? Not that I think everybody on this board already knows Kelvin well, but certainly would glad to see you here this evening and glad that you are open and willing to helping serve on the CIA board.
Well, thank you very much, Supervisor Fleischer, members of the board. I'm Calvin Jones, Delta Township resident, been with the Board of Water and Light 44 years, in charge of governmental relations and community relations. And my background is that I have the pleasure of serving the Lansing EDC, the Lansing Brownfield, and the Lansing Tax Increment Authority, and I've chaired that board for a period of 5 years. So I'm very interested in helping in any way I can in Delta Township in terms of moving the economic needle. So I just wanted you to know a little bit about me, and I'm tremendously pleased to be able to contribute whatever I can. And I'm used to being in the public eye, so I look forward to this. Thank you.
No, thank you, Kelvin. Anybody have anything? Beth?
Can you tell us, do you own a business or property within the CIA district along Saginaw Highway?
Well, I'm a member of the Board of Water and Light, and we pretty much provide the energy, the water, as well as some other things, in terms of services that are rendered from Delta Township. So I'm used to trying to make things happen, be it, through the township in a number of ways, whether it's a 425 agreement or some other quasi agreement that we can come up with, that type thing.
Okay, well, I was curious because the CIA board was supposed to be made up of 5 business or property owners. And so so the BWL is considered a property owner.
They
He's
do
a
actual
representative.
property and within the.
Okay,
property.
that clears that up. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kelvin, Dennis and Fonda?
Yeah, not to nitpick too much on this, but Kelvin, you're an employee of the Board of Water and Light, are you not?
Correct.
Okay, and are you there to represent the Board of Water and Light?
No, I'm not here to represent the Board of Water and Light. I'm here to represent, the township. I'm a resident. The Board of Water and Light I've talked with them about, doing something like this, and they've always supported me in terms of being able to do something like this. So, yeah, if I need any support from them, they're more than willing to provide that
Yeah,
support.
and it's nothing personal, Calvin. I've known you for years, and you're a good choice, but I really question whether, your appointment meets the criteria. I mean, the statute is very clear. It says a business owner or someone who has a business interest in. And just taking the language, it's just plain verbatim. We appointed 5 business owners to represent the majority of that board, as is required by state statute. And I just don't know if we're really stretching the interpretation of the state statute. Have you run this by our attorney at all to find out if it's okay, or?
No.
I would feel more comfortable doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't have any problem if it's determined that an employee of the Board of Water and Light, meets the criteria of the statute, but, to be honest, just at face value, it just seems like that's all.
A couple of things. I definitely wouldn't want to be in violation of the statute, but I do stand behind Calvin Jones and what I know he'll bring to the table in terms of experience and diversity, which is also important to me too. I don't know, if there is such an issue, can the seat be given to the Board of Water and Light?
No.
It has to
we
be
have to appoint an individual.
An individual. So I don't know how that works. I'm not a legalese.
Right.
And I'm sure you'll address that if that's an issue. I just stand for, Calvin was on my list of people to refer. It wasn't under the business category, but I do support him. How you're going to deal with this other issue, I think, is a valid issue to research. Thank you. Andrea?
Yes, I support the appointment of Kelvin as well. I don't know if there's a way to kind of have, a conversation with legal counsel, just to I don't necessarily oppose that either. But I would hope, to me, I see, and I guess it depends on that role, but as an employee of the BWL, that is a property owner. I think that maybe, I don't know if there are conversations with our consultant at all on this that might shed any light, but I would hope, I think you'd be a valuable member, so I'd hope that this is something that we would be able to approve.
Can I make a suggestion? Is that the board decides to go ahead and with the appointment that we do just ask for a confirmation of that the appointment meets the criteria the state statute by our legal attorney. And that's the end of it. But there ends up, necessarily not agreeing with the appointment, then that's something we'd have to address the board, so.
And actually, there is no immediate rush. The CIA board can continue to do its business with a vacancy. So I have no objection to the idea of putting this on hold and then we can get a question answered from the attorney. Because there is no time, there's no time, constraint here where the board can continue to work and do everything.
Yeah, we know by next week anyway, right?
Next week is a committee of the whole.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So the person would not be in seat for the next meeting, which was why, we can't forward, but we don't need to have that seat filled for the next meeting. We can do business without it. So if is that the wish of everybody that we hold off on it?
It dies for a lack of a second because you didn't get a second to the motion. So
Well, no, we made a motion.
you made it, but we didn't get a second.
I didn't make a motion. I brought the issue up
Oh, I'm
and I
sorry.
introduced
I
Kelvin,
misunderstood
but
you.
nobody made a motion. It can come back at any time.
Just kind of a question, are we able to approve pending kind of that? And so it won't be delayed?
However, I don't know if we can
Additionally, or is
approve pending the attorney saying it's okay. I
Okay.
don't know if that necessarily works. We probably would be best to get that
Okay,
review first and then we know for certain. And if they say the board of water and light doesn't constitute a business within the corridor, even though they own property and they are a business in the corridor, then yeah, we can come back with a different option then. Brenda?
And if it is determined that it is not meeting the needs of that category, is it possible for the CIA to consider bringing Calvin on in another category? We're not limited to the number of board members that are there.
We are.
We are, okay, so that is set, because I thought it could be a range of.
Right, he can
Members.
certainly be considered when there's the next time there is a
An open
vacancy
spot,
for
okay.
a non-business owner position. He certainly could be considered for it at that time if he doesn't meet the criteria for this.
Gotcha.
Were there other candidates that were business owners so that if our attorney says this doesn't work out, we do have some other people who applied and have been interviewed already? So
Yeah,
so
and
we have a bench.
And we're not
if you
even
will.
bound by
Okay.
the original pool either. We can, any business owner within the corridor would be eligible to be appointed and serve. So we went back to the original list for ease and quickness this time around, since it was so recent that we went through that process, but certainly can even cast or broader that too if we would like to do so in the future. So, okay, well, I will not make a motion on this and we'll move on. And Kelvin, hold tight. We'll come back after our attorney has made that to review. And if they say everything is kosher, we'll bring you back at our next business meeting. That's not a committee of the whole, so it won't be next week. The earliest would be the week after that. we
No.
bring you back.
No problem at all. And I'll continue to educate myself about where the committee is at thus far, so that if everything works out, I'll be able to hit the ground running. Either way, either way, I'll be an informed citizen of what's going on. So thank you very much for your deliberations.
All right, well, thank you,
Appreciate it.
Kelvin.
Yep, bye now.
We'll move on to item number 8, which is the introduction of the West Lansing Retail Development 3 LLC rezoning request in case 07-2109, and the planning department recommends that this be introduced. What's the pleasure of the board on this item? Andrea.
I move that the Delta Township Board introduce West Lansing Retail Development 3 LLC request to rezone 6.41 acres in section 9 of the township from AG2 agricultural residential to RM multiple family residential as described in case number 07-21-09. That further move that the application be considered for final action by the Township Board at the September 2021 regular meeting. And the clerk is hereby directed to publish notice of said meeting in the local newspaper as is required.
Is there support? There is support from Fonda. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item number 9, the final approval of the preliminary plat for the Echo Valley East. And the planning department recommends that the board grant that final approval of the preliminary plat. What's the pleasure of the board on that item? Dennis.
I move that the Delta Township Board grant final approval for the preliminary plat of the Echo Valley East subdivision as illustrated in the drawings prepared by Road Professional Services Company and dated August 6, 2021, subject to the following stipulations. 1, the developer shall execute a utility agreement with the township for the installation of the public water and sanitary sewer facilities. 2, receipt of final approval of the storm drainage system from the Eaton County Commissioner's Office, Drain Commissioner's Office. 3, receipt of the final approval and layout and engineering construction of the public streets within subdivision of the Eaton County Road Commission. And 4, the developer shall execute a waiver of notice and waiver of hearings for the establishment of a special assessment district for streetlights.
Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item number 10, case number 7-21-10, a special land use permit request for a place of worship at the northwest corner of Standard Drive and North Waverly Road, and the planning department recommends that we approve this request. What's the pleasure of the board on this item, Fonda?
I move that the Delta Township Board approve the special land use permit for a place of worship requested by Shekinah, forgive me, International Church, as described in case number 07-21-10 for the following reasons. 1, final site plans for Shekinah, forgive me, I'm horrible with names, International Church will require planning commission approval, and failure of the applicant to comply with any of the provisions required by the Delta Township zoning ordinance or any stipulations required by the Delta Township Board shall constitute grounds for termination of the special land use permit by the Township Board.
Support.
It's been moved and supported.
Just clarification, please.
What was that, Mary?
I have a clarification question. Gary, well, actually, it's Matt. Maybe Matt could answer the question. When it talks about the permit to allow construction, the 6864, is that the capacity? Or is that the square footage? What is 6864?
Square footage.
It's square footage? Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, since it's special land use permit, let's have a roll call vote on this, Mary. The board is on approval of the request.
Trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Mohica, treasurer Fedewa.
Yes.
Clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Fletcher,
Yes.
trustee Bowen,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Mary. And now we're on item number 11, designation of a delegate and alternate for the Michigan Municipal League Annual Business Meeting. And the recommendation is that Manager Reed is the delegate and Treasurer Fedewa is the alternate. It's the pleasure of the board on that item. Rhonda.
Okay. I move that the Delta Township Board designate Manager Brian Reed as the delegate and Delta Township's official representative to cast the vote at the Michigan Municipal League Annual Business Meeting. I further move that the treasurer Dennis Fedewa be designated as the alternate delegate.
Is there support? There is support. Is there a discussion? Yes.
I just want to assure the board that I'll be closely watching Manager Reed. When he's representing the township.
And if for some reason he's unable to fulfill his duties and responsibilities, we'll be ready to step in a moment's notice to
Absolutely.
take over.
And I'll be watching treasurer Dennis Fedewa.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and board members. So I'll just start by thanking you for the great honor of being the delegate once again for the MML conference. So a couple just follow up. The library is back to the pre-COVID hours. So I know we had that update from the library. So we're back hopefully at full strength there. A couple infrastructure things. Next week, we'll start applying biosolids to a farm off of Eaton Highway out west. I believe it's in Eagle Township. So those again, we'll be running some Delta trucks out there. So that's something we typically do in the spring and the fall. This year we did it in the summer and the fall. So that will be starting next week. Also, our east-west pathway project is delayed a little bit. They're having trouble getting the pipe, drainage pipe that we need for the project. So we are hoping to start that project before the end of the month. If we cannot get the pipe, probably at least by the first part of October, that project may have to be pushed back. So that's again, supply chain issues from COVID. It's happening on a lot of different projects, but so hopefully we'll get that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that that project is in peril. A couple road projects that are still slated to happen that haven't happened this year is Kreitz. Will be repaved between Saginaw and Willow. St. Joe from Kreitz to Elmwood or Snow, as they're still hoping to have done this year. A little piece of canal up here north of Saginaw, basically to the east-west pathway. There's a little rough stretch that they will be getting, and then Broadbent north of Saginaw also will be done this year. Couple economic development news things. Collins pop-up shop at the Lansing Mall, September 18th, is 26 vendors on board for that. He shared with me this morning Hotel Appreciation Month. 4 or 5 of the hotels reached out and really appreciated the township's efforts on that and said they saw some quite a bit of increased revenues for that month. So that was nice feedback to hear. Also, tomorrow there'll be an announcement. I know the property at Mount Hope and Kreitz closed, so there'll be a greatly anticipated announcement as to Project Spartan and what will be going in there. So I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seats for that. And just a reminder, the CIA board meeting referenced will be next Monday. We'll also have our budget presentation that Monday evening for the township board meeting. So that's all the updates I have, but happy to take questions. Sure.
Yeah, Brian, just thinking from our conversation earlier in the board meeting and the public comments that were provided regarding the flooding, I don't know through MML and MTA if there is any information kind of flowing down and flowing to you regarding the federal infrastructure bill and some things that are being discussed. And I know that's getting a little ahead of us because it hasn't been approved yet. But just thinking, are there going to be resources that could potentially, that the township could seek to potentially help provide some of this relief and offset some of the costs?
We are monitoring that. I mean, to this point, the two things that I've seen out of those proposed bills that could help us are some increased funding for SRF and drinking water revolving loan funds and principal forgiveness. So obviously with our wastewater plan and other future sanitary projects coming out, that could help. There's also some bridge funding in there, which doesn't help us directly, but I know the County Road Commission has an application into the local bridge program for the Webster Bridge. So that would hopefully help clear out some of the queue. I do not remember, Alana is keeping tabs on it. Courtney is, I'm sure Rick and Ernie are getting alerts. I don't recall anything dealing with storm drainage. There's a lot of drinking water stuff with the lead pipes. But to my knowledge, there's nothing in regards to storm drainage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, well, thanks, Brian. Move now to then the committee of the whole item, the discussion on small cell wireless facilities ordinance.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
I just wanted to disclose and rely on my colleagues to provide any feedback on whether there's a concern, but on the issue of small cells, as part of my full-time daily job, I do represent two companies that are communications infrastructure companies. So one is Crown Castle. I don't believe they have any investments or do any work here in Delta Township. The other is Charter Communications, and likewise, I don't believe this is in their footprint, but I did want to share that, and I don't know if that means I should not partake in this discussion or not. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I appreciate clarity because, yeah.
And that does raise an issue that I think we probably do need to get clarity on, and just the issue of they don't have any business here. Is there no conflict? Or since they are a company that would be regulated under this ordinance and I guess theoretically could move into the township, does that then still constitute so that's probably a type of question too. We could get clarification maybe from an attorney on exactly does the conflict exist in a situation like that? Probably for the time being, at least probably be kind of limited in your participation in the discussion. Okay. So, Alana, turn it over to you.
Thanks. So tonight I'll be talking about amendments that are needed in code to deal with small cell wireless facilities. And I'd also like to know, even though I'm presenting this item on the agenda, it was a multi-department effort between the manager's office, planning department, engineering, and then we also were assisted by outside legal counsel in putting everything together. So it's also my understanding that the board did have some discussion back in 2018 on small cell facilities, but those discussions were slowed a bit because state and federal legislation was being drafted at that time. But in my recent discussions with Board of Water and Light, they are seeing in the Lansing area an increase in applications for small cell wireless facilities. It's not unique. It's happening all over the state and the country due to changes in state and federal law. So as a result of the changes, in order to properly exercise regulatory authority over these small cell sites, we would just need to update our code. One thing to keep in mind throughout this process, in 2018, the FCC did adopt rules governing the small cell deployment, in many ways restricting and preempting local authority. And then shortly after, the state of Michigan also followed with similar restrictions and guidance for local authority. Small cells, just to go over for those of us who, it's been a while. Small cells are installed by private wireless providers, and they strengthen the cellular coverage and improve data speeds in response to increased demand. And in order to accommodate this generation of technology, small sites are required to be lower to the ground and also closer together than your traditional taller macro cell towers that we're used to seeing. Small cells are generally attached to existing infrastructure like street lights, electric poles, and then also on the standalone poles in the public right of way, which I included 2 images of some that are currently within the township as standalone poles. And then just that the township is required to allow small cell infrastructure in the public right of way under state and federal law. We're quite limited in what we can do. So the township code does need to be updated to reflect the changes and to just articulate the level of regulatory authority that the township retains, which is very little. So that regulatory authority allows the township to adopt aesthetic standards in relation to design and location. But keep in mind that it has to be reasonable and no more burdensome than other regulations that are applied to current utilities that are in our public right of ways. So the number one driving principle in this ordinance is to achieve compliance with state and federal law, such as to ensure that the township is processing these applications, which is, the 60 and 90-day shot clocks, and then ensuring that we don't miss those, because if we miss them, then they're automatically considered approved. So, make sure I don't miss anything. Discussing the applications, we did discuss that the engineering department would handle the wireless facilities permits, because they're already handling the right-of-way utility permits for relocation in the right-of-way. So they're the appropriate department to handle them, and then they've also been engaged in the process in developing the ordinance and the application process. And then just to hit on some key features in the ordinance, it does include, which a lot of this is already laid out in state and FCC legislation, the application fee for a permit and an annual rate for the use of the right-of-way, which is pretty minimal. The ability to extend a time period for the application if both parties agree, which would be 15 days if approved. And then labeling of each facility that's deployed with the name and the emergency contact. And then in some cases, I've seen other municipalities even go further with the permit number and such. Priority over the existing poles for deployment of small cells. So you're not cluttering the right-of-way with additional standalone poles. And then requiring that the equipment is maintained and doesn't interfere with pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And then ensuring that after the work that's being done or after their small cell is no longer being used, restoration of the right-of-way. And then, of course, insurance and indemnity provisions to protect the township. So this ordinance will amend Article 3 of Chapter 36, which regulates telecommunication. And staff is looking to gain board consensus or direction to move forward with the ordinance for the first reading, introduction, a public hearing, and then ultimately adoption.
Are there questions for Alana?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. I see that the fees that they build in, of course, the whole 5G transference of what we're all going to be using requires these nodes, these smaller to roll out. But do we have an idea in just what sort of number? Well, let me back up. I was curious as to what would the potential number of these located sites would be throughout the township, and do competing companies share the equipment or the technology, or do they all have their own proprietary? So you have an AT&T small cell node, and a Verizon small cell node, like next to each other, for example. Do we know if that's potential to happen or not?
If you had two brand new poles being installed in the right-of-way, if there's potential for that right next to each other.
Well, I think Trustee Pascarella might have an answer.
They don't share the equipment.
They do not share the equipment.
No.
So you could have just like two competing cell towers, companies.
They are small and.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not like a tower.
I think they could co-locate on the same pole.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So there could be a number of these throughout the township, but they're probably more along the busy right-of-ways, right?
Correct.
So it'd be like Saginaw,
Yeah,
primarily.
more densely populated areas where people tend to gather.
Well, if there's any way for me to get a better signal at my house, I'm less than a mile away from Saginaw, it's ridiculous. So, okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say, or I wanted to ask, or just kind of put that out there, that if eventually we do some burying of power lines, I'm thinking that that's not going to affect this. They need this to actually be above ground. And so it's kind of interesting to think about the aesthetics of these, if they're going to, continue to look like electric poles, or if they're going to do something else with them. I think that was all I had to say. So thank you.
Other questions? Okay, are everybody okay then with the idea of moving forward with this? See, everybody, nobody's objecting, so thanks Alana for the work on this and can bring it back for introduction at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're down to the end there. Any final board comments before we take final public comments? You know, any final public comments? Anybody left in the audience who wants to speak? Looks like everybody's staff. So seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.